Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to ask you, so as Mayor said, who is Mansour Abbas? That's the question. And I'm going to try to answer tonight without actually getting into his brain with a CT scan or an MRI. I'm doing my best. So thank you. And let's look at the next one. So the question is, why are we talking about Mansour Abbas? Here are 4 reasons that I put on screen. He enabled an Israeli government after 4 elections in 2 years. He's the man who holds the current Israeli government alive. Just this morning, a very prominent talk show host said, he holds the keys to this country. He was not that happy about it. This is someone on the extreme right. This guy holds the keys to the country, to Israel. The third reason is he's the first leader of an Arab Israeli party in government. So I've been covering at Darchei Noam elections for many, many years. And people used to ask, I remember actually in the social hall, in the shul, and I used to be, somebody from the back would say, and what about the Arabs? And at the beginning, I used to say, what about the Arabs? And then after, in the last few years, they would ask again, and what about the Arabs? And I'd say, maybe in 20 years, there will be Arabs in the government. And it happened faster than I thought. Here it is, but it was precipitated by a huge crisis. So it is a game changer in Israeli Jewish-Arab relations. And my objective tonight is to show you how that happened. I just want to say a caveat. There are deeper reasons behind this, and not just Mansour Abbas, but that would be for other Zooms to go into why it's possible. Tonight I'm looking at why this man did it right now. Thank you, Mayor. Next one. So just so to make it clear, I have to go back into with these memories about elections. The norm in Israel is every 4 years. But if you look, I'm sorry, I had done it perfectly, but now it's not so clear. But the last 4, if you look at them, were in 2 years. In April and in September, that was in the same year, 2 elections. And then March 20th and March 21st during COVID, another 2 elections. It was hard. It was hard for me to cover it from here. Imagine them going through it and going through this difficult exercise. Thank you. I just wanted to show you that so you understand the importance, because it explains it. Thanks, Mayor. Okay, can we see all of those guys below? So this is a picture, very, very, very interesting. So it says elections 2021. And these are the guys before, just before the elections. And even though you see some of them smiling, they were exhausted and tired and really uptight before the elections. All of these guys here got in, except for the guy at the bottom left. His name is Zalicha. He ran for the first time on an economic ticket. And in Israel, you don't win on an economic ticket, even if you're a genius economist. You see Netanyahu in the middle at the top, and you see Mansour Abbas at the bottom. And the others are the religious party, the right, the left at the bottom. There's only one woman, which is Merav Michaeli. But let me tell you that women won huge in this election. There's quite a significant number of them that are ministers and heads of committees in the Knesset. And actually yesterday, Israel elected for the first time the Attorney General. Her name is Gali Miara, and she's a woman, and people are saying she's the most important person in Israel now. So I guess there should be a fight between who is it? Is it Mansour Abbas or the new Attorney General? And that's another Zoom story because of the Netanyahu, if whoever knows about it, that he has basically a big fight on his hands because he's been being indicted probably for, and maybe even go to jail. So I'm let's go to the next one, but if we need more explanation, I'm willing to go through it later. Let's see how much time we have. This one, which says in real time results, I just wanted to show it to you to see. At the top says Likud with 30, by far the most seats that Netanyahu had. And at the bottom with 4 is Mansour Abbas. So it tells you a lot about the story here. You have the one with the most, who was supposed to have the government, and the one with the least, who was supposed to not even be mentioned. And surprise, surprise, it's just the other way. Let's see the next one, please. So this is after the election results. So what you see on the left is what ended up being the opposition, which is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's the head of the opposition. So Likud with those 30 that you saw, the religious Mizrahi and Ashkenazi, and the religious Zionism, who are the extreme right. And as you can see in the red, they have 52 seats. You need 61. In the opposition, below the line, you see the joint list, which is all the other Arabs but Mansour Abbas, which is a few other, obviously they didn't do so well, they only have 6. So, and they do vote with Netanyahu. They voted even now a few times. They vote with them, but they are not committed. They're not in a coalition with Netanyahu. So he can't really rely on them. It's case by case, whether they would vote with him. And 61 is needed to run in the Knesset. On the right, you see all the others. In red at the bottom, you see Mansour Abbas with the 4 green. And then you have right, left, and center, all of them who are not the religious or the other Arabs. And the critical point here before we go, what Netanyahu wanted was Mansour Abbas, but if you add the 4 that Mansour Abbas had to his 52, he would still be short. He would have 56. So what he was hoping for, that in addition to Mansour Abbas, he would get some defectors from all those parties. And in the end, he got 1 defector, but that gave him 53. And he didn't have enough. So that was tough. You have a Bennett-Lapid coalition. Bennett with the 7 minus 1 defector, and Yesh Atid Lapid with 17. If we can see the next one, I think it's the picture of the ones running the show now. Oh no, before I show you that. So Netanyahu did an unprecedented deal with Mansour Abbas before the elections. He identified Mansour Abbas many years ago in Jerusalem. He went and he saw him speak during a talk when Mansour Abbas was a student at the Hebrew University, and at the end, Netanyahu went to Mansour and did this and said, "See you in the Knesset, in parliament," because Netanyahu was amazing in identifying talent. Unfortunately, he wasn't so amazing in keeping them, because a lot of them became his enemies, ran against him, and now are running a coalition against him. But at the time he realized that Mansour Abbas might be a good fit. They had continuous meeting, even, don't ask, it was complete shows, both in Jerusalem and in various areas. They had negotiation. They created an agreement. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mansour Abbas had a 32 points agreement. And the major thing was a budget for the Arab sector, which is what Mansour Abbas wanted. Thank you. We're going to the next one. However, unfortunately for Netanyahu, Bezalel Smotrich said no. He's the leader of the religious Zionist party. He is Netanyahu's party, but he is really on the right. He absolutely rejected a coalition idea with Mansour Abbas or any other Arab. And that's the reason for Netanyahu not having a chance to form a government. He thought that he didn't expect this to happen. So he wasn't that smart. He didn't expect that Smotrich was his transportation minister who did well and they worked well together. And yet Smotrich was not willing under any circumstances to do it. That was a surprise. So that was the end of the idea of Mansour Abbas working with Netanyahu. But the importance was that Netanyahu gave Mansour Abbas what we say in Yiddish or Hebrew, hechsher. He made him kosher for negotiation, because nobody would have done anything with Mansour Abbas if Netanyahu, the titan of Israeli politics, had not embraced him. So that's what happened. So now let's see where we're going with this story. Here's where we're going with this story. So in this picture, you see Abbas with Bennett, who's now currently the prime minister, and with Lapid on the left, signing their agreement, in which basically they had no issue with accepting all the stuff that Abbas wanted, and he agreed with Netanyahu. And it was not so hard to agree anyway, because he didn't want anything political. Mansour Abbas is not political. Well, I'll show you what he's about, and then you make up your mind what you think. But this picture, I wish it was better, but I couldn't improve on it, is a picture that ran in the news a lot at the time when nobody knew if Mansour Abbas is going to be with Netanyahu or not. He was willing to go with Netanyahu, but then he couldn't. Okay, here's the big picture. Now we're going to the next one. And have a look at this. So this is who's running the show. It's not true, because there are many more ministers and they're all working very hard and they're all doing a great job. So who are they? On the right, you have Bennett, who is the prime minister. On the left, you have Lapid, who is going to be, they have a rotation agreement where Lapid will be not this coming November, but the next, I think, not this one. And what you have here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these people work for Netanyahu. And he treated them so dismissively that they would never go in a coalition with him. So what you have here is the right at the top with the glasses. He is right. Under him is Lieberman is right. He is the Russian community. Then Bennett is also right. So you have 3 rightist people. Then you have here 2 centrists, which is Gantz, which is at the top above Mansour Abbas, and Lapid. They are considered centrist. Then the left at the bottom is Nisan Horowitz, which is Meretz, which is the most leftist, but really there is no left in Israel, so-called left, and they are sometimes left, sometimes less, but they are in a coalition with the right anyway. And Meirav Michaeli, the woman, she's the head of labor and who revived labor. And then you see Mansour Abbas on top. He's part of the gang. And if you ask me who are the most fascinating people here, and I'm not prejudiced here, they are Mansour Abbas and Meirav Michaeli. They are the people who think out of the box. They are newcomers to the game, and they created a huge presence out of nothing, both of them. So even in the sense of language, for example, Meirav Michaeli changed the way Israelis speak now, because Hebrew is a very gendered language, and she changed that. And even, and the whole country in 1 year, people are talking differently. They're speaking, you know, after Kalman, I should talk to Kalman about this. We saw his talks on Hebrew. So in his first big speech, Bennett, the prime minister, looked at Meirav Michaeli and said, "Am I speaking Hebrew correctly?" But it's not just the Hebrew that she changed. She's Minister of Transportation, which Smotrich used to be, and it's one of the most difficult roles in Israel. The guy with the mustache is Lieberman. He's the Minister of the Treasury, and he's totally changing Israel the way it is economically. Enough for now, because we want to go deeper into the saga of Mansour Abbas. Mayor, next one, please. So he didn't want to be a minister at all. He doesn't want to play politics, and he wanted to be appointed as the chair of the Special Committee on Arab Society Affairs in the Knesset. It wasn't that he asked for this exact thing, but he said he wanted to be in charge of stuff with the Arabs. Two of his MKs got, in a way, more important jobs than him, because they got jobs internally on committees that, not ministers, as on committees that actually have an impact on Israeli Jewish lives. And so far, so good. Thank you, Mayor. So I put this up so you see, this is in the Knesset, in Parliament on the left. You see Bennett going to Abbas and treating him with great respect throughout, including Lapid and everybody else, and asking him, are things going well? And just to tell you, my God, I'm gonna go much faster. Basically, they have an agreement, no surprises. And there have been some surprises, but they are able. On the right, you see these two guys. On one hand is the extreme right Ben-Gvir, who used to be not allowed to have a party in the Knesset. They were outlawed. And on the right, you have Mansour Abbas in the Knesset. So here they are in front of the Knesset speaking, which is an absolutely incredible picture, because these two guys is not, if I told you 2 years ago that this would be a picture, I would say, no, it cannot be. Next one, please. I put this, and I apologize for the quality, because it was small and I made it big, but I just wanted to show you the kuved, the honor that Mansour Abbas got. This is the president of Israel. He's no longer, Reuven Rivlin. He finished his 7 years last year, and he receives Mansour Abbas with pomp and circumstance and a lot of honors. That's all I wanted to say here. And now a little bit more nitty gritty into who they are. So who is this party? Here's the initial picture where Mansour Abbas says, we won the 4 and we are in. And it says Ram party passes threshold and shakes up political map. So the party was established in 1996. It's called the Islamic Arab Party. They are religious, just like you have the religious party. On parties on the Jewish right, and until now they didn't exist. as a religious party. I mean, they existed, but they were not prominent. They were kind of part of. Conservative on the right, and the only objective throughout these years was to secure the funds and reforms needed for the benefit of Israeli Arabs, because they didn't always get the budgets. And what is written underneath, nobody saw. I put it there because the platform that nobody talked about and looked is that they believe in a two-state solution based on 67, kind of like the Israeli left. But they said in these elections, they do not want to speak politics. It's simply their traditional need for to live a life. Basically, they want to live like Israeli Jews at the economic level of Israelis in Israel. Thank you.
Shirley, if you don't mind, you said a couple of times that these Arab parties are conservative. I'm not sure I know what a conservative Arab party stands for. In fact, I'm sure I don't know. So I wonder if you could explain what that
Okay, so I didn't say this party, I said this party, okay? He distinguishes himself from the others. This is his raison d'etre. You asked just in time, because if you look at this picture in April 2019 I'm gonna answer, okay? The joint list, which was all of them, all of the parties, and you have here 4 parties, maybe 4. And in those elections, they got the most ever, which was 15 seats. Remember, the second party, and the guy's going to be prime minister now, has 17 seats. So they got 15 seats then together, all of them. And now, of course, this is, and you see Mansour Abbas is in the middle there, and he got 4. So this is all of them. So you have a communist party that's not religious whatsoever. It's no longer a communist party, okay? It's the past communist party. You have a ballot, some that say they want a one state solution, and then you have, when I'm talking about conservative, I'm talking about religion. They are religious. And depending on how much time I have, I'm going to tell you about the problems. They have some problems with what does it mean religion, but basically they're talking about religion when they say conservative. The others are not that. Some of them are just garden variety. Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I answered, but conservative meaning religious, and this is only the Mansour Abbas party. Thank you. Okay, so what's the strategy? And I'm giving you this based on the elections. This is elections. This is, there is no one who doesn't have a strategies employed. So he also had, and I heard them speak, his guru in terms of strategy, but they were basically true to who they were, conservative. So they're not that much for LGBT, although it's not him personal, but there are people. So even now, I don't have time. If you want another Zoom, you can laugh like you wouldn't believe. And some of the others want to establish these help to LGBT groups and other groups, and people in Mansour Abbas's party are totally opposed. Anyway, they are conservative, pragmatic, realistic, results-oriented. This is marketing. I worked in marketing. Alan, you worked in marketing. This is the branding. The focus is economic improvement in the lives of Arab Israelis. That's what they want. Thank you, Mayor. So about him personally, which everybody's fascinated about. I don't know how much time we have. Anyway, he was was born in 1974. He's married. He has 3 kids in a village called Magar in the Galilee. He studied dentistry because his father forced him. wanted him to, and he respected that at Hebrew University. He practiced dentistry for 2 years, and that was it. He was the chair of the Arab Students Committee, 70. That's where Netanyahu met him and was totally impressed by him. And then he went to do what he wanted to do. He studied political science at Haifa. Now, when he was very young, he was very knowledgeable and religious about the Quran. If I didn't know that he's religious, I wouldn't have guessed from the way he speaks or talks or generally, but he is. And even by age 17, he was going around all the mosques and giving Divrei Torah or Divrei Quran. He knows the Quran by heart. He doesn't talk about it, but that's what he did. And he was, people were very impressed with him and marked him as outstanding from very early on. Me too. The first time I heard him, everything stopped. It was like, wow. And he's not bombastic. He's very low key. And now, what was his hobby, so to speak, or his passion? He used to facilitate reconciliations in Arab society. So they live in Hamula, or families, and they don't trust the Israeli police too much. So when they have conflicts, they have their own people who go and negotiate between them. And he was probably the most known as the peacemaker, the one who always succeeded to make peace within families so they don't kill each other for honor killings and all of that. And I know that there was one case when he didn't let anyone out of the room for 12 hours and he thought he had it and he didn't have it, and he cried and cried and cried because he failed. He cries, he's emotional openly. Thank you. I think that this is for now here, although there's other things about him personally. So let's move on. So that was personal, but more political. He's the head of the Brown Party. He was elected in 2007 Secretary General of the United Arab List, which is this party. In 2010, he was is deputy chairman. In 21, elected to the Knesset. He won the 4 seats. Thank you, Mayor. Now I'm going to go into a different mode. I'm going to read to you some quotes, or you can read them, you can look at them. And the guy, I wish you could hear him because there are videos, but how many? The tone is not political. He's this, rumpled. Look at him. He's voluminous. He's not wearing very elegant clothes. He's not showing off. He's just a very simplistic person in a way, but he's not really. So here's what he said. The most important thing that he said, that is being said over and over and over in Israel, why he left the joint list. Okay, I'll explain. Okay, that is the number one, and I'm going to explain without going back. This is a question that I asked myself. Kol hakavod, Bob. How come a peacemaker who brings people together left the joint list at the time? I couldn't find the answer, and nobody was talking. There was no argument. He had no argument with the joint list. Why would you leave Mansour Abbas? So he had to leave because the party had a bylaw that said you can go only in 3 consecutive, you can be an MK for only 3 consecutive Knessets, which means at a normal speed, it would be 12 years, right? If a Knesset is 4 years, times 3 times, after 12 years, forget it, get out, give other people a chance. So he couldn't really run anymore within the joint list. So he convinced another small party, Balad, to go with him, and he had to be out. But that was a fantastic question. Thank you. Okay. Here's an interesting, so I said on the left, you see this short quote. The others are long, but this one on the left is said over and over and over again. And you can say, he said it in a big interview, how smart this man is, and you understand it only because he was doing conflict resolution and reconciliation, because he's anticipating. Like when when Mayers asked, is this good for the Jews? What's his agenda? So that's the question. Is there does he have a hidden agenda? Does he want the Jews to give him what he wants, and then he's going to be an enemy and try to destroy the state? So he's anticipating that. And he said big time, Israel was born as a Jewish state and will remain a Jewish state. And what does it mean will remain a Jewish state? There is no interest in my part to change Israel from a Jewish state. It will remain a Jewish state. Now, here's one thing. On April 21st in the Knesset, on a session on the Holocaust memorial, he said, as a religious Palestinian Muslim Arab, I have empathy for the pain and suffering over the years of Holocaust survivors and the families of the murdered. I stand here to show solidarity with the Jewish people now and forever. And in the events in May, it was a war actually, he visited an attacked synagogue in Lod. It was really in a terrible state. And I saw him, they showed him go in, and he was crying because he cries easily. Next, please, Mayor. I have a couple of more quotes. So here's kind of his manifesto. He says, I, Mansour Abbas, a man of the Islamic movement, am a proud Arab and Muslim, a citizen of the State of Israel who heads the leading, biggest political movement in Arab society. Courageously champion a vision of peace, mutual security, partnership, and tolerance between the peoples. I reach out a hand in my name and that of my colleagues and on behalf of the public that voted for me, to create an opportunity for coexistence in this holy land, blessed by 3 religions and 2 peoples. And let's go to the next one. He said, this is the last one, I think. I carry a prayer of hope and the search for coexistence based on mutual respect and genuine equality. What we have in common is greater than what divides us. Now, before we move to the next one, I meant to read you this when we talked about him personally, because I wanted the video, but it didn't work. So he had this interview that only very important personalities get, in which the questions are, they go into the kishkes of people. And he was asked about his personal, and I didn't put it in, but here's what he said. What brought me to politics is the main crisis of Arab society on the issue of crime, violence, and all sorts of other hardships. I've always dealt with conflicts, which I told you about. It gave me strength, but it's hard to do it because it's hard for my family and my parents because they have to be my first commitment. You could see him say it in Hebrew, but we don't have the time. He says, I'm afraid I'm a good politician and a failed parent. I worry. I try to give them some quality time with what little time I left. I'm in Jerusalem for most of the week. When does he say? From Sunday to Thursday. I'm one day in the Negev, and then I have Friday left. It's very difficult. Then he said the most difficult time in his life was that his older brother died of leukemia 2 or 3 years ago, and he was a donor, and he said that was also the hardest time of his life. And he said to himself, and this is a quote, I say to myself, maybe if I get out of politics, it will heal a little. It will get a little easier. I hope not to get to the point where I have to apologize to my children and my parents for things we've missed in life. And then I missed the one where he said, I don't think I said it, where he said, if I knew what I was going to go through 3-4 years ago, I wouldn't have done this because it's too much. Now, there's one other thing before I'm almost finished. I just have 2 funny quotes in the presentation. But what I'm going to read to you now is like, how do we say in English? Did he drink the Kool-Aid? Is there such an expression, Mayor?
Yes.
Somebody who drank the Kool-Aid. And what I want to read to you is something that Ben Caspit, who is the most prominent journalist in Israel today, he said it on the 31st of December 2021 with, wine and champagne. And I don't know what he was really. Now, I listen to Ben Caspit every day. After I finish here with you, I hear Ben Caspit for 2 hours. And I hear him for another hour between 10 and 11 in the morning, which is a killer for me. But Ben Caspit is the most prominent. He's not right, he's not left, he's in the center. I would say, in my view, he's more right than left by a mile, but I don't think he's aware of that. So here's what he said, and it's a little longer than what I read before. He's saying, Mansour Abbas is the man. So he was really pompous. He's the man of the year, the decade, and maybe the generation. Mansour Abbas jumped into the pool, not knowing if there was water in it. And he continues with his historic gamble. Remember, Netanyahu asked him to. He wasn't the one to take the initiative. And Ben Caspit said, we should all pray for him. The entry of Ram, the party of the Islamic movement in Israel, into a coalition led by a prime minister who wears the kippah, in which senior right-wingers and even far-right figures serve, is not just a historic event. This is a defining, jaw-dropping, and reality-changing event. Mansour Abbas did an even bolder act than Anwar Sadat's arrival in Jerusalem. Behind the Egyptian president was a sovereign state, military power, tens of millions of civilians, international support. Mansour leads a small party. His actions go against everything preached by the other generation of leaders of his kind. His stakes are huge while the chances of success are unclear. If he succeeds in laying the cornerstone of the long-awaited bridge between the two peoples, this is an act of biblical scale. The Nobel Peace Prize is much less than he deserves. At some time in the future, we'll have to place statues of him in town squares. Well, Ben Caspit is the most interesting one. Why did he say that? Why did he go to the length? Because he and many feared that Israel is going into chaos, that 4 elections in 2 years, plus Netanyahu wanting to go to a 5th, and without a possibility of having a government in the 5th, what Mansour Abbas did here for Israel was a big deal. So hearing it from him, it's incredible. I think he's gone to, I don't know what Kool-Aid he drank. Anyway, but he was genuine about it. Anyway, not only him, many felt like that. Can we go to the last 2 ones, which are very short and funny? So the guy that you see here, he was part of the government. His name Aryeh Deri. He said, maybe you will help us. Tazor lanu, Mansour Abbas. So he's the head of the religious Haredi Mizrahi party, who's now in the opposition with Benjamin Netanyahu. So he asked Mansour Abbas, because he's religious, to help him get a budget for a Baba Sali religious Mizrahi celebration. Why would he not get the money anyway? Because I don't know if any of you know, but there was a huge disaster last year in Meron, where 45 people died in the Ashkenazi parallel celebration. And they put for the time being, a stop on any such celebrations until they make sure that it's safe and so on. But Arya Deri wanted the Baba Sali thing, and he was asking Mansour Abbas to be the one to help him. By the way, Arya Deri was indicted and he's out of government now. This is for a second time. He was already in jail once. And the very last one is, this is funny. This is really funny. So this was pages long. I couldn't believe it. If you want, if you email me, I'll send you what it is. So this is an Orthodox rabbi, Professor Dov Fisher, blah, 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 editor, a Southern Senior Rabbinic Fellow, Rabbi of Young Israel of Orange County. So he says to Mansour Abbas, sorry? He says, Mr. Abbas, we Orthodox, it's long, by the way, I just took this out. Mr. Abbas, we Orthodox rabbis throughout the world may soon find ourselves looking instead to you, to the Arab Muslim Bedouin political party in the Knesset, and to your 4MKs, and to your associates in the Muslim Brotherhood for Egypt for guidance. That's it. I just want to mention something I didn't, is that the Knesset approved 400 million shekel to the various Arab municipalities, and also passed a law allowing electricity connections for Bedouin in the Negev cities, people who didn't have it, and not only in the Negev, with various caveats. So it's not so easy for them to get it, but it's possible. So they took him seriously in the coalition, and he got enough of what he needed to get credibility in the Arab community, that now they are going to be able, and they started building their infrastructure, and with COVID. So it seems that it's working. There's some funny stuff that he made a mistake and voted against himself. That happens all the time. And then they had to pass the law again, and other funny stuff. He has a woman now because one of his 4 people died, and he has a woman who didn't want to vote for for a law that is basically anti-Arab. And he had the no surprise agreement with Bennett, and she abstained, and that was a surprise. And she said, she spoke and she said, I only told my husband. She's actually a very, very, she has some PhDs and stuff, very advanced. But she screwed him in a way that he surprised Bennett, and that law fell. And they survived. So there's all kinds of other stuff happening where with agreements, and they're giving money to the religious, and the budget is the biggest thing. But they passed the budget, and now they are going to really work very hard to implement what they need to do to keep the country going, because it was paralyzed without a budget for 3 years during election. So that's what I have to say. I don't know if you want to do a video to show so that you actually see the guy.
Well, it's your show.
Yes, please, please. I think it's short. I think it's short.
Okay.
I think more important than anything is that we show a little bit. I'm willing to stay. I mean, I'm willing to stay.
1 minute. I'll find the video.
Excuse me, in the meantime, if everybody could mute themselves, we were getting a little bit of feedback because somebody isn't muted somewhere.
Yes.
In Zoom land.
Leslie, I think you're the culprit.
There's a few actually, so thanks.
Sorry for.
Yes, we should see.
If it's a problem, then you can always Google videos of Mansour Abbas. I wanted this one because it has the English, right? His Hebrew is amazing.
For what?
Sorry?
Okay, I got it, and
It's short. It's only a few minutes, 2-3 minutes. Yes. So this is before.
Deputy leader of the Islamic movement in Israel, head of an Islamic party, and a relatively new member of the Israeli parliament. But when we asked Mansour Abbas if he'll be willing to sit in a government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, this was his answer.
I'm not saying yes and I'm not saying no. If you want the Arab representatives to support you or your government, put a proposal on the table and then we can say yes or no. Or we can say no, but we do agree to this and that.
A surprising answer coming from a member of the Joint Arab List, which Netanyahu worked extra hard to delegitimize in previous election campaigns.
The right-wing government is at risk. The Arabs are galloping to the polls.
Abbas has been giving Netanyahu in passing weeks. A significant sign of that was Netanyahu joining a special discussion about violence in the Arab society, led by Abbas himself. And Abbas has his reasons to consider an alliance with the right wing.
There's a huge gap between what's happening in Arab cities to the rest of places. Therefore, we need a new policy. We need to invest more in Arab society, develop the economy, the education, and welfare services. My attitude is leaving the left-wing pocket without entering the pocket of the right wing. I'm neither left nor right. I represent Arab society. I want to work on things that matter to me.
The Joint Arab List is the loudest advocate for the two-state solution and the only one discussing it publicly other than minutes. Netanyahu said he will annex large areas of the West Bank last summer, preventing a few...
Okay, that's enough because it's going into much more
But
than
that doesn't
one.
seem...
Okay. Thank you so much, Mayor, for running the show so smoothly. I couldn't do it without you. Do we have time for questions?
I think so, yeah.
Go ahead.
So what would be the best way of doing it? See.
Well, perhaps if people could use the participants and put up their hand electronically, so that way.
Or just say
Yes,
something.
I have a question. I wonder how are the Palestinians respond to Abbas?
You're talking about the Israeli Palestinians, the Israeli? Or
Can't
you're
hear you.
talking in the West Bank? Or general? So,
There's no sound.
okay, so I'm sorry. So it's a good question. How is the Arab society treating him? Well, they are.
There's no sound.
I have no sound. Hello.
Yes, how are they responding, the Israeli Palestinian?
Yeah, I
Israeli
heard.
Palestinian,
you.
also the West Bank.
Mayor, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I thought I'm not heard. So there isn't any big criticism of him. Of course, they envy him that they didn't do as well, the other parties. Nobody is trying to sabotage him because he's trying to do good for the Arab society.
No sound.
So they are quiet. They are pretty quiet.
Leslie, if there's no sound, there's something at your end. There's nothing that we're doing here that can help you. I don't know.
Did you hear what I said, Leslie? No sound. I guess he didn't.
Yeah, I guess if he has no sound, he can't hear me telling him that it's his problem.
I'll send him an email. I'll send you an email. Any other questions?
I think Alan had his hand up before. I'm not sure. Alan, are you still?
Well, I mean, that was my question, but also not just within the, I mean, are you saying the other?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
I'm going to repeat my answer, but
Okay,
Alan
so
is asking
Yes,
the
I
same.
did hear you.
No, I'm asking a slightly
On
different
and off.
question.
Okay. So ask Alan and I'll repeat.
Okay, so the question is, outside of, I mean, firstly, there's a party that is not conservative. I now got that, made up of Arabs. How do they characterize him? And then
Who is they? Sorry, I didn't get it. Who?
The other Arab party that is not conservative and not part of the coalition?
Not part of the coalition doesn't mean much because they play everybody.
I understand.
Yeah, but how do they look at him? Well, he was part of them, right? This is his. They can't. They envy him basically. I know them much better than him over the years. Because they are in the news and they are mainstream. He is new. He was quiet for many years. There's no issue. They can't say anything negative. They are more, for example, the Labour Party, an Arab MK in the Labour Party wanted to start a special place for LGBT, and also they were angry about this is and in his party they were against, but these are not big clashes. I didn't mute myself. Did you mute me, Mayor?
I may have done it. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
so there are no big issues at this point, except for that LGBT issue, and it's not Mansour Abbas, but he's not the guy to attack anybody. So he's not saying, you idiots, what are you doing? We're going with science. He's very advanced, right? And he's trying to manage the best he can. And so far, he hasn't had a crisis yet.
There is no sound.
Leslie, it's your problem. Any other questions, Mayor? I don't.
Well, no, I don't see any hands, but I have a question because
Go ahead.
I'm thinking about where does that lead? People were asking, what do the Arabs think? But I'm thinking, do they like what they see? And if they do, then in the next election, is he likely going to double his party's numbers and become a force to be reckoned with?
Well, I can read between the lines.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's your problem, Leslie. I'll send you an email and I'll do you a special presentation just for you. We'll talk. Okay, the answer to you, Mayor, is if you listen to Ben Caspit, he said Mansour Abbas jumped into the pool not knowing what the water is. It's not clear. We should pray for him. I'm not going to pray for Mansour Abbas because I don't know. The point is that everything in Israel is very volatile now. And this is one big issue, but I am extremely worried at the moment.
Send it to others too. Send it to other people too.
Okay, I will. I can send it to everybody. Right now, there were 3 killed in the West Bank for planning to do. It's not clear what it was, and there were already clashes in the West Bank, and the situation there is very complex. So what will happen to Mansour Abbas? If you ask me, there was already a test in May where you couldn't get a worse situation than Arabs and Jews within 67 having a terrible situation with Hamas sending bombs. So they overcame that. The elections were in March. In May, there was the big war actually in Israel between Arabs and Jews. And some people thought, all the agreements would be gone, but it didn't happen. The coalition happened after, which says that they have a real interest to work together. Now, if you're asking, Mayor asked me to talk about Mansour Abbas, and from everything you see, he is very important. But the real problems of Israel are not that. Israel has three problems interrelated, completely interrelated. The first one, which is an extremely high density of population. The second one is two ethnicities, with now Arabs being 52% and Jews being 48% between the Jordan and the Mediterranean. And the third one is 3 times more critical climate change. When you take these three together, the problem that we are focused here in the diaspora does not begin to cover what's going on there. And my vision, I have a vision that instead of just thinking about the one problem, we in groups decide to take one of these three. That some of our groups of us would look at climate change and create something, like instead of us just watching to all the videos, that we would actually do work, because you can, to find out what is going on with climate change. By the way, they're doing amazing thing. And with the density, they're now thinking of flying cars, and Israel is startup nation. And between Arabs and Jews, a lot of other things are happening. So it's a very complex situation. And actually, I think Mansour Abbas, this presentation is a very nice diversion, because it shows some success and some breakthrough, but we are not at a point, and it's not 1 state or 2 states or 10 states. It's way beyond. How are you going to carve out a situation where you have the density where you cannot get them apart, anyone from anyone? And I wish that we would, if we were to do a project, is in smaller groups, take one of these 3 things and work on it and learn, so at least we know here. I mean, I do this myself, and get to be knowledgeable about one of these 3 things, which are equally important in Israel now, equally important.
So things are complicated, but we have 2 more questions, Judy and then Bob.
Hi, Shirley. Thank you, as always, for being so illuminating. I very much appreciate it. I guess I had 2 questions, and they're kind of related. How is Abbas viewed by the neighboring countries, the neighboring Arab countries around Israel, as well as the Abrahamic Accord countries, a little bit further east? And also, what kind of impression are you getting as to how he's viewed by the people in the territories and in Gaza? How is he viewed by them?
Okay, so first about the Abrahamic Accord, there is also basically a big earthquake happening in the Middle East, where Israel is becoming the most important country of all. It is becoming, as the US is seen as exiting the scene, actually, Israel is the strong country, and they all want to be with Israel, all the Sunni countries, with the exception of Iran. So that and Dubai, I don't know if you know, but they were attacked with missiles in Dubai, and they all want a relationship. And Morocco is having, with the king, Israel is becoming very strongly connected with all the Arab countries. Mansour Abbas is small potatoes in this big game. Nobody looks at him. It is basically like for many years, in 48, they invaded Israel, and then Sadat came, but really Mansour Abbas is only important inside Israeli politics. Now, in the West Bank, they look at Abbas basically they have so many problems there that they don't see him in a negative way and they don't see him in a positive way. Now, he spoke about it, and he's not responding much. He's focused on what he's doing. So he's not acting on behalf of the West Bank or on behalf of Gaza. Whenever anyone brings up something political, he is quiet. He's not into it. He has his focus, laser focus on the situation within Israel 67. And he probably knows what he's doing. So that's all it is. It's a big change within Israel. And it's a big change for the Israelis themselves, more for the Jewish Israelis than anyone else. I don't know if I answered it.
Yeah, yes, you did very clearly. Thank you.
You.
Thank you very much.
You said, Mir, there's another question?
No, but I just got a note from Bob that Judy asked his question. So
Okay.
good for you, Judy.
So think about creating some groups to study various aspects. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating what's happening in that part. And we are so paralyzed. All we do is one state, two states. And the most important thing that I can say is that we in the diaspora see it as a frozen area where nothing is happening politically or otherwise. And actually underneath everything is moving. And one day we will be surprised by change, because change happens in a surprising, like Mansour Abbas. You didn't know about him before. He came out of the blue. And I predict that things will happen out of the blue, and you're going to say it's out of the blue, but it's not. And I think it's our responsibility to be more aware. And today you can. I mean, I hope for the time when you are going to, like myself, I live with myself and I hear Israeli TV, radio, podcast, talk to people, everything you can think of. And my wish would be that it would translate it for you into English immediately so you can do what I do. And I'd say, learn Hebrew even. I used to say, forget about Hebrew, they all speak English, but it's not true. There is something in the Hebrew language that explains who those people there, the Israelis are, even the Arabs who speak Hebrew. So if you think about that and you're interested, I can direct you to how to do it and what to do it, and take on something. And then we will be the community. We would be the community that is really educated about Israel, because things are moving fast. A lot is happening there, and we are not here even talking or aware.
Well, that's why we get you every now and then to remind us what we should be thinking about.
You choose the topic, and I'll talk about it, because I follow everything, even the gossip.
Okay, we'll wait a few months, and then I will consult with you and see what will be appropriate, and maybe we'll do something as you suggest in some sort of the different groups. But for this evening, thank you very much for bringing this important and interesting personality to life before us. And this event was recorded, so if you know somebody who wants to listen, it can be made available. And
Yeah, I think we should send it to Leslie. I'll ask Yaron to send it to Leslie.
okay, so good night, everyone. And
Laila Tov, Laila Tov.
Thank you, Shirley. That was great. It really was.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So amazing.